certainly the Gentiles were enjoying their new position, even though their opportunity came when the unbelieving Jews were temporarily removed. Paul is of course, presenting these ideas, these deep ideas, in a form that people will understand. That's why he's using the horticulture thing. And then he also was talking about, see, in those days, if you looked it's in Numbers 15, verse 7 to 21. God said, when you harvest your crops, take the first, what he called the first fruits, take the first bunch of grain that you've gathered in, and make and grind it and make what you need to make dough with. I mean, it's a process, and use that as an offering. Yet what you were saying is, I want the first. I enabled your plants to grow. I want you to offer to me the first fruits of whatever it is. If you were picking fruit off of the olives off, I want you to take the first ones that you take, and those are going to be the ones that I want.
So the term occupy came from.
Yeah, that's right. Offering the first to God. Now here's the big picture. Hopefully this will help you to understand. The olive tree. So this is so that we understand what he was trying to do. The olive tree is the visible church. So picture the olive tree. The root of this tree is Christ. So the tree is anchored to the ground through its root system, and that's Christ. The believing Gentiles were grafted in, the branches were grafted into the tree, and they partake of the nourishment that comes from the root in the ground, which is Christ. The believing Gentiles. Now, there were a lot of them that weren't believing. We all think, it was all the Gentiles believed. No, they didn't. Just like not all the Jews did. They received from Christ by being members of the church, and not church like we think of church. The called out assembly, that's what the word church in Greek means. Okay, conversion is the grafting in of the wild branches into the good olive branches. So when they did the grafting to graft the Gentiles in, that was their conversion. That was being converted from a pagan to being a believer in the one true holy God. The Gentiles were useless as wild olive trees. Why was that? For their fruit was sour and unsavory. In other words, nobody is going to go to a wild tree and pick the fruit off of it and try to use it the same way they would if they were using a cultivated olive tree.
Because a good example is right in our neighborhood. There's all these wild grapes. Try eat one. Man.
This was the state of the poor Gentiles. They were wild. They didn't know God. They couldn't be nourished by Christ because they weren't willing to accept him. Now things have changed. They've been converted. They've been brought into. Gentiles wanted what only comes from being grafted into a cultivated branch. In other words, the Gentiles wanted what the Jews had that were believing Jews. They wanted God's blessings. They wanted God to accept them. And the only way that they could do that would be if they were taken in, and God, through conversion, through believing, through belief, and then they would become part of this we call the spiritual body of Christ. The only way they could become a member. The only way today, it's the same way. How does a person say, oh, how can I satisfy a holy God? Believe in him, and you will be saved. Believe in him. But if you're thinking this is some kind of a religious game, it's not. Then they could partake of the nourishment of Christ, because now they're children, now they're children of God. You become a child of God. It's applicable, or it applies in this way to a saving union with Christ. By their faith, they were grafted into Christ and partake of him as the branches of the root. So think of the tree. And it doesn't matter what kind of tree it is. It doesn't have to be olive tree. You cut the roots of the tree, and the tree dies. The tree gets its nourishment from the roots, and the roots get its nourishment through the ground. The rain falls, takes some moisture in. The root, in fact, what happens to a mature tree is what? What happens when there's a drought? They don't die necessarily.
Their roots are shot deep into
The roots go deep, deep, deep down to get any kind of moisture they can get out of the ground. And that's, you can see why that's such a good example to use. Paul would often proclaim doctrine. I know, what's doctrine? Doctrine are things that we should believe in. That Jesus is the Son of God, that he was born of a virgin, that he was crucified, died, and was buried, and on the third day he rose again, and he will return to judge the living and the dead. Those are doctrines. Those are things that we believe in. Paul would often proclaim doctrines in different ways in hopes that some would understand. What does that mean? We might speak to athletes in different ways than we would to, let's say, scientists. You can talk to a scientist, and we have to wrap our head around now and see how can I, what analogies can I use to a scientist to get him to understand? And if I was talking to an athlete, I'd have to come up with some sports-related analogy. Oh, it's like okay, you're the member of a team, right? And it's not just the players on the court or players on the field. It's all of the members of the team, the ones that are sitting there, the defense when the offense is on the field, the special teams, all of this. But you're all part of in this case, the body of Christ. Mm-hmm. You're members of the kingdom. So that's what Paul's doing. He's a smart guy. He's saying, I'm going to, whatever it takes. That's right. I want to speak in a way that they can relate to. Paul's intent was to reach as many people as possible. After all, that was the commission that Jesus gave him when he was converted on his road to Damascus experience. And by the way, we're supposed to be doing that ourselves. Otherwise, we're like the person who's on a sinking ship, which is the world, right? Okay, there's an analogy. The ship is going down. It's going down slowly. It's not going down super fast. And somebody, missionary, preacher, whatever, shows us where the life vests are. And what are the life vests? The way to connect to God, who's going to save us off the sinking ship. So we find out, from the missionary, from the priest, from the evangelist, you need the life vest. Well, where are the life vests? They're in that room over there. You open the door, there's all the life vests in there. So you go and you peek inside the door and you go, oh yeah, those will keep me afloat when the boat goes down. Okay, shh, don't tell anybody. There might not be enough for everybody.
Oh, man.
I'm telling you, there are people that'll do that,
Yes,
right?
there is.
Especially on the
Absolutely.
Titanic.
Especially, at least they didn't run out of ice. So here they are, right? Paul is saying, don't keep it a secret. Tell as many people as you can how they can come in union with Christ. How they can not spend eternity wishing they had. We have an obligation. When we all look at the Great Commission and we say, Jesus is saying, going therefore into the world, telling all the world, well, we're supposed to be doing the same thing. Why? Do you think really that God saved us to have us sit in church on Sunday and segregate ourselves from the rest of the world and not do anything else? No. He wants us to share with the people around, both by our actions, the way we live our life, our deeds, the things that we may do for other people. When you stop and help somebody, and you don't know that person from anybody, and you stop and you help them change their tire or do whatever, some people would say, oh, what a nice person. The majority of the world would drive right on by. Or they say, oh, look, a chicken.
Good example of that.
Yeah.
And this was when I was in my early 20s, and my friend and I were going to the beach. And we had her 2 little kids in the back, and they had a flat tire. I cannot tell you how many people passed us by. Nobody stopped to help. I don't remember what happened, but I know we sat there a long time.
Yeah.
She wasn't afraid.